Well, how are we getting on? Today we've got a lovely question in. How are you, Dave? I was chatting to Seb briefly about this today, but I just read your last email and saw you were looking for questions, which I am. Send me your questions, comments, reply to the emails. Get in touch however you like to get in touch. This video came up in my YouTube suggestions over the weekend. Now, I've left the video link out. The bit that I found interesting was about cooling down. The claim being it's regularly overlooked, but spending 10 minutes after training can make a big difference to recovery, mobility, and injury risk. I'd looked through more of his content, and he seems to advocate for relaxing into extended holds, 2 minutes plus. Talk about stretching there, with a focus on nasal breathing. I'd be interested to get your thoughts on this. And is there a cool down protocol you recommend? Cheers, Thomas. Now, there's a lot in that question. Thomas did send me a video link, a YouTube link. I'm not going to share it because the bit he's pulled out of the video is only a very small segment in quite a long video. But it's a dude going through training protocols. And yeah, he talks about how he thinks the cool down is overlooked. So, cool downs, according to current sort of thinking in the research world, doesn't really fulfill any of the claims made about it. Doesn't reduce injury risk, doesn't increase this or that or the other. So, do we need to cool down? And if we are going to cool down, what should we be doing with our time and energy? I remember growing up, and there was this thing we were all terrified of. Because if you just stopped exercising, you didn't do a cool down, your blood would pool. I was like, oh my God, better keep moving and cool down and do a bit of stretching and this and that so we don't get this blood pooling. And, well, don't know what happened. We probably just assumed we'd die or something or have a heart attack. I don't know. And blood pooling is kind of a thing, but do you know who it's a thing in? It's in people with serious health issues. It's not really a thing in the fit, trained community. So what it is, now I've just got a few notes here. Yeah, real simple. What it is, gravity goes down, doesn't it? So it's difficult to get blood back up the body. Your heart pumps, there's an arterial pulse that drives the blood away from the heart into the tissues, but its return journey to the veins, the venous system, there's no pulse. There's wee valves, so when the pulse from the heart and the arteries should have enough pressure to pump that blood up the vein, and then when it goes through a little valve, it's a one-way valve, it can't get back down, it goes up to the next valve, can't get back down, up to the next, boom, 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 boom. Problem is, what if that pulse is not strong enough? Here's a cool little thing that's been coming up more and more, is how important your leg muscles, your calf, your thighs, your hamstrings are, and just that muscular action assists the pump. So if you're worried about venous return and blood pooling, build your legs. Build your cardiovascular system and work your legs. I think you're going to be all right. So basically, if you're just kind of walking around, that's going to pump the blood. Shake, try and get rid of muscular tension out of the body. That's going to allow, if muscles tighten up, that pump you feel when you're doing a high rep set, you come to the last few sets and you feel that pulp like your muscles about to explode. you shake that out so the muscles come loose again, and all that built up fluids and everything that's in there gets to be pumped away. So blood pooling, unless you are on the poor end of the health scale, blood pooling is not something you really need to worry about. So what we were taught as kids, nonsense. Like a lot of things we were told as kids. But what are we going to do at the end of a training session? So you finished training, you've done whatever training you're going to do, and you're hot. You might be sweating, you might be breathing a lot. I do think it's a good idea to let the body settle a little bit and maybe take advantage of that time where the heart rate's coming back down and everything's kind of returning to baseline. Stretching. So Thomas says this dude recommends extended holds with nasal breathing. That's all good. I have a question that's came through where we're actually talking about mobility and flexibility. I'll be talking about that in a future video. Make sure you do the like and subscribe thing and the bell notification thing so that when that comes up, you get to hear it, get to watch it. So I am in agreement with what the man's saying that the cool down is an ideal opportunity to get in some lovely mobility work. Mobility and flexibility, again, controversial topic, gets talked about in a lot of different ways by a lot of different people. I came up through karate and martial arts, so a bit of first-hand experience. Yes, some of the things I used to think are wrong, and there's a good chance some of the things I currently think might well be wrong, but that's okay. We learn. So when you are looking to build, to develop range of motion in any joint, if you're trying to put length into a muscle, difficult to do when you're cold, far easier to do when you're warm. Difficult to do when you're actually tight, much easier to do when you're somewhat relaxed. So that said, when you are at the end of a session, you are warm and you're tired. The muscles will be tired. You have worked them. They're not going to be contracting with their full force. It's a great opportunity to put some length into them. Give them a good stretch. I don't like the extended hold. The hanging out in a position for 2 minutes, nasal breathing was the quote. I do like nasal breathing. We'll talk about that separately. But I would rather, remember, we're trying to bring everything down. You're pumping hard. You want to get back down to baseline. Your heart's going at 150 odd beats per minute at the end of a set, maybe even more, depending on what you're doing. You want to get it back down to your resting or close to resting 60-ish, whatever. You know what I mean? That's a long way for it to come down. Your respiration rate, your breathing, as you're coming out of your last set, walking around a bit, you want to get that back down to close to, basically you want to walk off the gym floor, the training floor, almost at homeostasis. Back to your, your 10 breaths a minute, back to your 60, 70 beats per minute of the heart, whatever your baseline happens to be. So that said, your cool down should start relatively quickly and then taper. So if you're doing a mobility movement, let's say, do you know what? Quick yoga. It doesn't get much better than quick yoga, which again, you'll find on this channel somewhere. Just search it. I've been trying to put together a few playlists, going through the videos. Turns out I have a lot of videos. Look up quick yoga. It's a lovely little mobility routine. Not 100% comprehensive, but pretty close. So half a dozen movements, if that. You can do it anywhere from 3 up to 6 or 8 movements per round. You can start running through that. It's essentially the sun salutation, if you're familiar with yoga. Run through that at a fairly rapid clip for 2 to 3, 4 rounds, and then slow it down a little bit. Slow it down a little bit. As you're slowing down, you might go a little deeper into each position. You might try and explore the end range of each position a little bit more. You might become a little more conscious of particular tight lines. So if I'm at this angle, that's okay. But if I'm at this angle, ooh, that's a tight line. So I might be more accurate with what I'm looking to stimulate. And you slow down and you slow down and you slow down until your final round through is, I'm not going to say held, but it's laconic. And yeah, maybe there's pauses and you're relaxed and whatever else. By the time you get up out of that, your heart rate should be nearly back to homeostasis. Your breath rate should be back down to where it should be. And you should feel loosey-goosey and maybe even a little sleepy, right? And I think that's a good way to cool down. I think it's spot on. So yeah, the end of a session is when you are your most pliable. So take advantage of it. Flexibility and lifting, this idea of being muscle bound, is valid if you're doing partial range pump sets, if you're doing lots of isolation work, maybe if your goal is just size. Yeah, you can get very, very stiff. If you're on my channel, if you're following my work, that ain't you. You're on the more athletic side of things, where we generally lift through full range of motion, if not all the time, then most of the time. And we do compound movements most of the time. So flexibility, being mobile, is kind of built into the training. I've seen more people go from not being able to touch the toes to touching the toes simply by doing kettlebell swings or Romanian deadlifts than I have doing passive stretching. Yeah. My personal story, like I said, I came through karate. There are periods in time where my flexibility, even though I could kick and make karate shapes lovely, but I felt tight and horrible. And it was building strength in the hamstrings that I had stretched the bejesus out of. But once I started when I discovered the kettlebell all them years ago and started doing swings on the regular, hamstring injuries went away, hamstring mobility improved, and just lower body strength and power went up through the roof. It was all that stretching had actually done me harm, undone by getting stronger. So sensible training, you shouldn't be getting too stiff and tight anyway. So you don't necessarily need to stretch. So if you've other things you want to do in your cool down that you do at the gradually tapering pace and intensity, why not? Is it not a great place to do the rehab that you've been putting off? I'm meant to do a lot of external rotations. So you've just finished a heavy set and you're a bit knackered. Why don't you just get a light dumbbell and then just work a few external rotations, if that's on your plan? Maybe it's a bit of ankle work. Maybe it's a bit of who knows what. Bit of additional core work. We covered that. Oh, we covered that. So on the breathing. I'm an old martial artist. A lot of the guys I train are martial artists. We've just had several medals won in a couple of BJJ tournaments. I'm delighted. Because of that, I don't like this idea of you finish the workout and the workout's finished. I want the idea of you finish the workout, but You're preparing in case you have something else to do all the way up until you leave the building. Let's say until you're showered and changed. This puts the emphasis on being ready rather than just pure recovery. Recovery is great, but there's no urgency about it. The martial artists, especially the way martial arts tournaments are often run, you might arrive at a venue and weigh in, and you might have a fight there and then. Then you might have another fight immediately afterwards. Then you might not have nothing for a couple of hours, and you might be back on again. They could be chaotic, so you need to be ready. If it's Thai boxing, MMA, and that, then yeah, okay, you've got X number of rounds with a minute break. That's fine. The BJJ, the judo, the karates, all that, they don't run the same way. So it's a case of you need to be able to get ready in that 1 minute if you're fighting, if it's a single fight done over several rounds. But if it's a tournament running over a day, you don't know how long you're going to have to rest. Is it going to be 30 seconds, a minute, 5 minutes, an hour, 4 hours? Who knows? So that is a real mindset sort of thing. The more deliberately we cool down, it becomes more like what we do in between sets. So in between sets, we're talking about